The Great Sphinx of Giza has a real documented history of hidden spaces inside it, and that fact alone tends to get buried under decades of far more dramatic speculation. Archaeologists have known for a long time that the Sphinx isn't a single solid block of stone with nothing inside it. Carved directly from the natural limestone bedrock of the Giza Plateau around 2500 BCE, during the reign of the pharaoh Khafra, the monument has accumulated a genuine collection of shafts, tunnels, and cavities over its 4,500-year history, some carved intentionally by its original builders or by later Egyptian dynasties, and others cut much more recently by treasure hunters, antiquarians, and early archaeologists who spent centuries digging into the Sphinx looking for exactly the kind of secret chamber people are still speculating about today. The most thoroughly documented of these excavations was carried out between 1978 and 1998 by Zahi Hawass, working alongside the American Egyptologist Mark Lehner, in a systematic study specifically focused on excavating and mapping the tunnels and shafts beneath and within the main body of the Sphinx. Their work rediscovered and properly documented several previously known but poorly recorded features, including a vertical shaft cut into the Sphinx's back, another near its tail, and additional shafts near the top of its head and along its flanks. One of the more colorfully named of these is Perring's Hole, a drilled shaft located just behind the Sphinx's head, first documented by the 19th century excavator John Shea Perring, now filled in, but still recorded in the archaeological literature. None of these confirmed shafts and tunnels have ever been found to contain a hidden library, a sealed archive, or anything resembling the kind of dramatic discovery that shows up in speculative headlines. What Hawass and Lehner's careful documentation found, consistently, were features far more mundane in nature. Tunnels most likely dug at various points across the site's long history by people searching for treasure or hidden chambers themselves, essentially earlier generations chasing the same legend that's still circulating today, along with features that may have served practical functions like drainage or structural maintenance access during different periods of the site's active use and later restoration. The single biggest source of the modern secret chamber beneath the Sphinx legend traces back to a specific person and a specific claim that has nothing to do with archaeology at all. In the 1930s, an American self-proclaimed psychic named Edgar Cayce, working through what he described as trance readings, claimed that a hidden chamber existed beneath or near the Sphinx's paws, containing the accumulated records and lost knowledge of the legendary civilization of Atlantis, a repository he referred to as the Hall of Records. Cayce further predicted this chamber would be found and opened before the end of the 20th century. It's important to be direct about what this claim actually is and isn't. It originates entirely from a psychic reading, not from any archaeological evidence, historical document, or scientific survey. No hidden chamber matching Cayce's description has ever been found, and his specific prediction about it being uncovered by the year 2000 did not come true. Despite that, the Hall of Records idea has proven remarkably durable in popular culture, precisely because it gives a name and a specific dramatic destination to a much older, vaguer human fascination with what might be hidden beneath one of the most famous monuments on Earth. What gave the Hall of Records legend a genuine, if modest, boost of real scientific-sounding evidence came in the 1990s, when seismic survey work conducted near the Sphinx's paws detected what researchers described as a rectangular anomaly in the subsurface readings, essentially a zone where the seismic data behaved differently than the surrounding bedrock, in a pattern that some researchers interpreted as potentially consistent with a man-made cavity. This finding is real and was published at the time. What's equally real, and consistently left out of the more sensational retellings, is that mainstream archaeologists and geophysicists who reviewed this seismic data have disputed whether it actually represents an artificial chamber at all, pointing out that limestone bedrock naturally contains cracks, fissures, and variations in density that can produce exactly this kind of anomalous seismic reading without any human construction involved whatsoever. No follow-up excavation or more. Advanced non-invasive scanning conducted in the decades since has confirmed the anomaly as an actual man-made chamber, and it remains, honestly, an unresolved data point rather than a discovery, sitting in roughly the same category as the disputed 2025 satellite radar claims about vast structures beneath the Khafra Pyramid that we covered in an earlier script, real raw data whose deeper interpretation remains genuinely contested among experts. The most recent thread feeding into this whole conversation is a real event, but a much smaller and more mundane one than most of the coverage around it suggests. In May 2026, a Cold War-era CIA document from 1952 resurfaced and spread widely online, drawing attention because it referenced the phrase "temple under Sphinx," while cataloging a set of photographic negatives from Egypt. Multiple outlets covering this story have been careful to note, correctly, that the document itself appears to be a routine archival inventory record, essentially a filing description for old photographs, rather than any kind of intelligence briefing, field report, or confirmation of an actual discovery. A single filing label using evocative language isn't evidence of anything specific having actually been found. It's a 60-plus-year-old cataloging note, whose original context, and whatever photographs it was actually describing, isn't something the resurfaced document itself clarifies. That hasn't stopped it from being treated online as fresh confirmation of the Hall of Records legend, which is exactly the pattern this entire topic keeps following. An old, unverified idea getting a fresh jolt of attention every time a new piece of ambiguous, dramatic-sounding material surfaces, whether that's a psychic's prediction from the 1930s, a disputed seismic reading from the 1990s, or an ambiguously worded filing note from 1952. Zahi Hawass himself, the archaeologist most directly and continuously involved in actually excavating and mapping the real tunnels and shafts inside the Sphinx over multiple decades, has been consistently and publicly clear on where he stands regarding all of this. He has repeatedly and directly rejected the Hall of Records theory and broader claims of a hidden underground city beneath Giza, stating plainly that the Sphinx has already been thoroughly excavated by his own team, and that nothing resembling the legendary hall exists based on that direct, extensive excavation work. This matters quite a bit for weighing the credibility of these ongoing claims, because Hawass isn't a distant academic commenting from afar. He is, by a significant margin, the person who has spent the most actual physical time excavating inside the Sphinx itself, and his position, based on that direct, hands-on work, is a firm no. It's worth connecting this back to the separate, more recent controversy around synthetic aperture radar claims from researchers Corrado Malanga and Filippo Biondi, whose work we already covered in detail in an earlier script about the Great Pyramid, because their team has also made claims specifically connecting the Sphinx to their broader disputed underground network theory, including a March 2026 claim suggesting a massive structure concealed beneath a large sand mound near the Sphinx, potentially connected to imagery on the ancient Dream Stele monument that depicts what some interpret as two Sphinx figures rather than one. As with their earlier pyramid claims, independent fact-checking organizations, including AFP Fact Check, have specifically reviewed these more recent Sphinx-related assertions and found them to be exaggerated and lacking proper scientific validation, and no independent research team has replicated these specific findings using different equipment or methodology. This is the same pattern worth flagging every time this particular research team's claims resurface: genuinely advanced radar technology, applied in a way. Multiple independent geophysicists have raised serious, specific methodological concerns about producing dramatic three-dimensional visualizations that have not been confirmed through the kind of independent, peer-reviewed replication that would normally be required before treating a finding like this as an established archaeological fact. There's also a real, separate scholarly debate worth mentioning here, distinct from any of the chamber speculation concerning the Sphinx's actual carved face, something we touched on in an earlier script covering the AI facial reconstruction research. Some researchers, including the author Robert Temple, have argued, based on historical and stylistic analysis, that the Sphinx may have originally represented a different figure entirely, potentially the Egyptian jackal god Anubis, before being recarved at some later point into the human pharaonic face visible today, with Temple specifically proposing the current face may represent a later Middle Kingdom pharaoh rather than Khafra. This remains a genuinely contested, minority position within mainstream Egyptology rather than an accepted conclusion, but it's a legitimate example of the kind of real, ongoing scholarly disagreement about the Sphinx's history and identity that exists completely separately from, and gets frequently tangled up with, the entirely separate and far less evidence-based speculation about hidden chambers and lost archives underneath it. Put all of this together, and the honest picture of what's actually inside and beneath the Great Sphinx of Giza looks like this. There are real, extensively documented tunnels and shafts inside the monument, thoroughly mapped by decades of direct excavation work led by Zahi Hawass and Mark Lehner, and none of them have ever contained anything resembling a hidden archive or lost library. There's a real, unresolved seismic anomaly near the Sphinx's paws from the 1990s that mainstream geophysicists dispute the significance of, sitting in scientific limbo rather than confirmed as anything artificial. There is a real, widely circulated, but ultimately unverifiable Cold War-era CIA filing note from 1952 that fuels speculation without actually confirming any specific discovery. There's a real, ongoing, seriously disputed set of radar claims from a specific research team whose broader pyramid claims independent fact-checkers have already found exaggerated. And there is a real psychic prediction from the 1930s that gave the entire legend its name and its dramatic shape. A prediction that never came true within the time frame its own author specified. What there isn't, based on any properly documented Peer-reviewed, independently verified archaeological evidence currently available is a newly opened hidden chamber beneath the Sphinx, revealing anything at all, worse or otherwise. The real story here isn't a secret that just got uncovered. It's the story of how a genuinely fascinating monument with a genuinely real and interesting history of tunnels, shafts, and unresolved scientific questions keeps generating fresh waves of far more dramatic speculation every time an old rumor gets a new piece of ambiguous material to attach itself to. Decades after the archaeologist who actually did the digging already told the world plainly what he found and what he didn't.